And welcome back to episode 6 of the Sports Lad podcast, brought to you by me and my co-host Thomas Bailey. Today at 4 p.m., the NFL deadline for the 53-man rosters was set, and there were some notable players on the Bills that were kept on the roster. There were some that were cut. Some fan favorites like Frank Gore, Tyrell Shaver, Zach Davidson were all sadly cut. But then you got players like Buffalo Joe Andreessen, Lancaster native, who played for UB, brought his way from just a tryout on the rookie camp to making his way all the way to the 53-man roster. I want to give a huge shout out to him. What an impressive job he did in the offseason this year to really earn his spot. And then you have players like KJ Hamler, who was also caught. But then you have some surprise, like Casey Toohill made it over Kingsley Jonathan. And then there's also the one trade that we made for the punt and kick returner from the Jets. He's also defensive back, but he's basically just as the punt kick returner. And then because of that, Daquan Hardy, who most people thought was a lock because of his return abilities, was cut from the roster. What are your thoughts about how this day turned out?
Ooh, for the Buffalo Bills here today, I feel like this was a very sad day for me. I'm a big Syracuse guy, and Kingsley Jonathan being on that cut list really was such a gut-wrenching move for me. I can't believe Toohill makes it over him. That we'll get to in a little while, but most of the stuff was pretty standard. We already knew coming into this that all these receivers, there's a lot of guys that are just very mid on this team. Like even when Claypool was still here, you had Claypool, you had MVS, Samuel, Shakir, all these guys that aren't these big name guys. They're all decent options. It's just you can't keep everybody, and we know that. And I think Beane made the best selection that he could here. I think that realistically, with the way this team is, you want to have as much variety as possible. So getting the guys like Matt Collins for the deep ball, Keon Coleman to basically be that big number 2 guy, Shakir for the slot, Samuel for those RPOs, the run option pass plays, things like that. So I think that this team is really primed to do a lot of good things in the receiving room. So obviously we can't keep guys like Andy Isabella, KJ Hamler, all these guys, especially when they couldn't offer the upside that in the return game that they were supposed to give us. And then as for Daquan Hardy, it is a tough one for me. I thought he did pretty well, in my honest opinion. He did all right for me. I'm interested to see what Cordington does. I think it's Cordington or Cordington or something. I think it's Cordington.
Yeah, like Bennington, I think is his last name.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, though, I think he's a very solid option. I looked at a little bit of his tape beforehand. Like he had a decent return in their second game, but he did pretty well against the Giants too, from what I saw. But either way, there's a lot of things to get into. I really liked to see a couple guys like Quentin Morris stay. I liked the Smoot pickup. I liked him staying. I'm happy, of course, with Andreessen. And then another guy I want to mention here is Jamarcus Ingram, the cornerback. I thought he had a phenomenal training camp, great preseason as well, locked down on that other side there. Think he might be another Benford where he could like really start to show us some flashes this year if he can get involved. So that's interesting. Some guys I hate to see go are like, of course, Hardy, Stevenson, Justin Shorter I really liked. Obviously, like I said, you can't keep everybody. We already have Matt Collins and Coleman to go get the deep ball like that, the big play catch ability that Justin Shorter can provide. So sadly, he's a guy that's gone. And, of course, the aforementioned Kingsley Jonathan, who in my opinion was the worst decision out of the entire thing. If there's any one move I would have changed about this, it would have been Jonathan over Toohill. Anything else, though, I think Beane did a very good job. Of course, Frank Gore Jr. is another one. Phenomenal game against the Panthers, went nuts. But at the end of the day, I like there's no way he's going to get time over James Cook or Ray Davis anyway. So really, there's no room for him. There's nothing really important there for him. And honestly, it's the best move for him in his career anyway, in my opinion. So yeah, I really thought that the team did pretty good with the cuts. And what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to first get into that Frank Gore part. One bone to pick that I have with many Bills fans, they're freaking out over us cutting Frank Gore Jr. Yes, he looked good in free agency. Or not free agency. He looked good in the preseason, but he is not better than Ray Davis. He's not better than James Cook. And people are like, well, then how come Ty Johnson gets a spot? Ty Johnson's a completely different running back. And Ty Johnson offers special teams. That's the big thing.
Ty Johnson's also a special team. Yep.
Yes, when it comes down to like your like number like 46 through 53 on the roster, a lot of those players are inactive for game days. Ty Johnson will be active, but like so it's like, can they offer special team roles? It's like, and Frank Gore Jr. played 0 special teams in the preseason, played, I think, less than 30 snaps throughout his entire collegiate career in special teams. He's not a special teams guy. He's just your basic everyday running back. And yes, he looked really good, but we have James Cook, who just had 1,300 yards last year. We had Ray Davis, who we got in the 4th round, and many experts and analysts were saying was a steal and has looked really good. Like, there was just no room for him. Like, obviously, we're going to keep Gilliam because we like to have that full back for that flexibility, and he's a special teams guy. Again, being able to be good on special teams will get you onto an NFL roster, even if your normal position, like as a running back, there may be someone a little bit better than you. When it comes down to that 3rd or 4th spot, if you're really good on special teams, you're going to get it, because special teams is a very underrated part of football that a lot of people and fans don't seem to grasp. So I didn't think there was any RB battle to begin with, unless like Ty Johnson just looked absolutely terrible. I think as long as he looked decent, he had that spot on lock. And especially with how good he was for us last year, he fits Joe Brady's scheme. He's great when James Cook needs fresh air, maybe, or if Ray Davis is injured, he can slide and be a capable backup. But I like Ray Davis and James Cook as that 1-2, and then maybe 3-4 times a game you give it to Ty Johnson. With his speed and explosion, he can turn a 5-10 yard play into a touchdown, like you saw against the Jets last year. I think it was week 11. I think it was like that 4th down play where it was just a little like swing pass, get it out, and then he took it like 50 yards for, it was either a touchdown or right into the red zone. Like, he has that big play ability, which I absolutely love. So I don't understand what the issue is with cutting Frank Gore. And then you brought up Kingsley Jonathan. Yes, it sucks to see him go. I would have definitely liked to keep him over Tuhill. But the one I have the most issue with, even though it's not a big deal, it's just because I don't think we're going to be able to keep him on the practice squad, is Tyrell Shavers. I wasn't able to watch too much of the preseason this year, but I was able to watch a lot of that Panthers game. And I think it was the second drive. So yes, the Panthers backups are in, but he hit this absolutely dirty double move, and then it would have been a touchdown, but DiNucci overthrew him. Like, he had this dude in the dust. Like, the dude was like on his hands and knees falling at like the 15-10 yard line, and Shavers was already in the end zone. It was one of the filthiest routes I've ever seen. And he was an undrafted guy, pretty sure out of Ohio State. So he was at a big name college. So he's used to playing against high level, obviously not NFL level, but he came in and he shocked a lot of people, and he played really well. And I just don't think he's going to be able to sit on the practice squad. I hope I'm wrong. Obviously, there's no way the Bills don't try to get him on the practice squad if he makes it through waivers. I think he's an easy one to slide right in. But I feel like he's going to get stolen, and then he's going to carve out a career of being a good wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3, where he's never going to be like a stud, but he can offer you some value. And yeah, I get we have a bunch of wide receiver, like 2, 3s, and 4s right now, so we don't really need them. But it's not all about this year. I feel like his spot as that 6th guy, I think, could have been perfect. Yeah, we would have had to try and find someone else to cut, but I just feel like it would have been really nice to have him. I really hope he stays in our practice squad. Same thing with Zach Davidson. He's like 6'7", 245, and can move. Like, he is an athletic freak. I get keeping Quentin Morris because of his blocking ability, and he's shown to be a very good tight end 3. I'm just scared he's another one of those guys that gets stolen. And then down the line, it's like, oh, wow. He was like Isaiah Hodgins a couple years ago, went to the Giants and put up some decent games. And I'm afraid that Shavers and Davidson could be the same way. Someone steals them, and then they could put up some decent games while we're over here complaining about why our bench is so bad. And when someone goes down, oh, the replacement sucks. Well, sometimes we have the replacement, and we just try to let him sit on the practice squad and just hope he doesn't get picked up, which, again, it's hard with the 53. It's who you're going to cut, who you're going to keep. So tough decisions. It's just those are the 2 that are really sad to see me go. And then another guy, not really talked about too much, but I watched him again in the Panthers game. He looked really good in special teams, was undrafted rookie DeCorey Couch. He didn't really have a spot on as a DB on the team, but he was making some plays as on that special. I think it was like the first play he tackled the kick returner at like the 10-yard line or the 15-yard line. He made a big play in special teams. And then I'm like, who is this guy? I go on Twitter and I see all of like the big Bills reporters and analysts were like, yeah, he's been tearing it up all preseason, all training camp. I'm like, oh, never heard of this guy, but he's looking really good. So I hope he can stay in the practice squad because he can be one of those guys, say a Jamarcus Ingram, say that return guy, one of our other corners goes down, we bring him up. Yeah, he's not going to play, but he would be a really good special teams guy. So I'm really hoping some of these guys that we cut do not get taken other teams because they have value. I just understand why they didn't have the value in the team this year. Another thing I want to talk about is we haven't had a pod. We haven't done an episode in like a month. So we weren't actually able to cover any of the preseason games. So I just want to get your thoughts on how the team looked throughout the preseason for the players that are still on the roster.
Well, in regards to that, I mean, the first game, of course, was very rough. 33-6, we lose to Chicago. And, man, I didn't really watch this game. It was on my niece's birthday party. So I did not get to watch this game, sadly. I was too busy helping with decorations, things like that for my sister since she was doing it by herself. But besides that, I was basically worried more about the highlights than anything. I go in and I watch the highlights. The defense looked very solid at first. The starting unit was doing very well, getting him to third down early, but I noticed that Caleb Williams was just better. He was making plays on the opening drive. Swift was getting lanes from the O-line. The rushing defense was kind of scaring me in that first game. Swift went nuts. Caleb Williams was doing great on the ground as well. Nobody could really cover in the middle of the field. I noticed a lot of the midfield plays, like the curl flats, things of that nature, drags, were all open. It's making it very difficult for us. Another thing, the third and longs, man, you got to stop them. I understand it's the preseason, but at the end of the day, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 16, and they're picking them up. And it's like, that's what cost us this football game. The defense was getting them into 3rd down, 3rd and longs too, and they just couldn't seem to finish that up. And then on the opposite side, I'm not too worried because obviously Josh didn't play, but really Mitch Trubisky did not impress me at all in any of the games in the preseason. I'm honestly surprised that he's on the roster in a sense. I understand the value of his name. I mean, it still holds some merit to it being the 2nd overall pick just 7 or 8 short years ago. And because of that, I understand. Yeah, I totally do. But at the end of the day, it's still a little nerve-wracking for me considering how poor he played, especially in the first 2 games. He started to really just kind of get me nervous, especially in the second game. He had a wide open receiver, overthrew him, and it was an interception by the Steelers defensive back there. I think it was Minkah Fitzpatrick still. I think they might have had their starting defense out there. But week 2, we kind of tightened up some holes. The defense looked absolutely amazing all game against both Russell Wilson and Fields. Honestly, a lot of people were saying Fields had such a great game in that game, and I'm not going to lie to you. He had 3 or 4 really lucky plays, especially that one catch on the sideline. What a throw by Fields. That was tipped, directed literally right into that receiver's hands. If it wasn't dropped, that's a pick every day of the week. It should have been an interception, and it deflected off his hands and into the receiver's hands. And it's like, what a throw by Fields when it should have in reality been an interception. A couple other things to take into account were how bad Russell Wilson played in that game. Greg Rousseau was a monster, absolutely destroying them. I actually have a buddy who was there watching the game with me this time, and his name's Chris. He's a big Steelers guy, and he's like, well, we got the backup offensive line. I was like, oh, no, that's Broderick Jones right there, buddy. He just got destroyed. That entire first quarter, Rousseau was there within a second, maybe 2 seconds the entire time. Rousseau had an amazing training camp as well. From what I've seen, he's been phenomenal. So look for a breakout from him. I know we've been saying that for the last couple of years now, but I think this is finally the year. Another big thing, another really big guy is Jamarcus Ingram. He really surprised me. He kind of made an impression like Damar Hamlin did a few years ago in the preseason. And obviously we know how that works out with Lamar now being a mainstay on the roster for most of the time. And realistically, Ingram has looked pretty good on the practice squad for the last couple of years. I've been surprised that he hasn't made the 53-man. Same with another guy in Nick McLeod, who actually got a job by the Giants last year. So finally learning our lesson here and keeping some of the good players that we actually had a chance to keep. Aside from that, though, the running back depth was great. The offensive line was nuts for the entire preseason to me. We were able to run the ball with every running back that was out there pretty much. Frank Gore Jr. went nuts in the last game. The second game, we were dominating the entire time in the trenches. We were running the ball down their throats, especially when DiNucci came into the game because he couldn't throw a pass. I don't know why. They just were like, yeah, no, he doesn't know the playbook, so let's not have him throw the ball once. So, yeah. Ray Davis had an amazing game in that one. The last game, I watched a little bit of it, tidbits. The highlights were really good. Of course, Shavers on that double move you were talking about. I didn't see that play offhand. But at the end of the day, honestly, I think that Beane got most of it right. I do think that this roster is pretty good, pretty well built, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think there's a lot of different guys that are going to be weapons, a lot of different X factors there. Of course, Josh didn't play. I really would have liked him to get in there just a little bit in the first quarter or something against Carolina, just to kind of help him shake the rust off. But nonetheless, a solid preseason. Of course, this is one of the worst ones in terms of record and points and stuff. We didn't score touchdowns at all in the first two. So it was a little nervy, like giving me some nerves on how good of a coordinator Joe Brady is. But I think when we get to the regular season and we got Josh, it's just there's so much potential with this offense. And then on the defensive side of the ball, if the linebacking group can stay put together without Matt Milano, sadly, I think we'll be in a pretty good shape. Come midseason, I think we could probably be one of the best teams in the league still. I do think that we do have a very tough schedule, so we'll see what happens. But for the most part, preseason was pretty good from my perspective.
Yeah, for me, I'm just a little worried about the depth, but I think that more so has to fall on just Mitch Trubisky and Shane Buechele just being awful. Again, I think flat out I would rather have just cut Mitch and brought up Ben DiNucci. I get Ben was just playing against backups, but so was Mitch, and he was just looking bad against
even
them.
Anthony Brown was pretty good in the game. He went like 12 or 13 when he was in there.
I mean,
a lot of dink and dunk.
I'd rather have Mitch than Anthony Brown. And DiNucci didn't look great by any means. He missed the wide open touchdown. He almost threw a pick on just a bad crossbody throw, but he was. And that Carolina game, they opened up the playbook, and he was looking through his reads, getting the ball out quick. A lot of the Joe Brady style that he's known for is the quick game, and then boom over the top. But I mean, overall, I don't really care too much about our backup quarterback because, in my opinion, if Josh Allen gets injured, we lose. It doesn't really matter. Josh Allen, it doesn't matter who we put in. If Josh Allen, knock on wood, if he gets injured, knock on wood, we lose. That's why I've been saying that if he is ever to get injured and miss the year, like tear an ACL or anything, I want it to happen week 1. So then we can just tank the year and just throw it out and get a really good pick. Knock on wood again. I don't want that to happen. I'm just saying,
versus week 16 or something.
Where we're gonna make the play. Yeah, where we are basically in play to make the playoffs. Then we make the playoffs and we're 10-7, and then have the 23rd pick, and the season was wasted because of him getting injured. Yeah, I'd much rather have. Kind of like with the Bengals, the last 2 times Joe Burrow's got injured, they got better picks because of
ACL and things like that. It takes almost a full year to recover.
Yeah,
and so
that's also
he's out week 16, week 17. He's probably not coming back until at least week 10 of the next year.
Yeah, so if he's ever to get injured, I want it to be as early on in the season as possible, so I can just know, okay, season's over. Let's prepare for the next one. But again, knock on wood.
Or we can have a Matt Castle season with Brady. That'd be insane.
Yeah, or a Nick Foles, but with the Bills, that's not going to happen. You already know that. That happened with the Eagles.
Mitch Trubisky's going to bring us the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that'd be insane. That would be crazy. But a couple of players I wanted to shout out that did make me feel better for the season was, at least in the first game, because Josh did play the first quarter of the Bears game, and we only scored 3 points on 2 drives. But I do want to give a shout out to Shakir and Samuel. They looked really good on those opening 2 drives. Yes, the first one we didn't score any points, but I think it was the first 2 plays looked good. And I think it was a stuff on 3rd and 2. I wasn't able to watch that drive. I was working, but I was able to catch the second drive. And I remember it was they were using Samuel all around. He was doing different things. He looked really good in the screen game, which is what our offense has been missing for years, is we've been really bad at screens, and Samuel's really good at them. So I really like to see that. Shakir had a couple of nice plays. Coleman hasn't really done too much. Yeah, he had that touchdown against the Steelers that he quote unquote dropped. But if I'm being honest, the way that ball was thrown in preseason, I don't want him to catch that. I would rather him drop that than him catch that in a meaningless game and get his head blown off. Now he has a concussion and he's out the first couple of weeks. Like in the regular season, that's a bad throw, but you got to make that catch. But in the preseason, no, I'm fine with you saving yourself and not making that catch in a meaningless game because that's a hospital ball, which is on Trubisky. Josh would never do that. He would throw it more inside to him and low, so he's not getting his head blown off. But that's here nor there. And then, you got to give a shout out to Greg Rousseau in game 2. And you also got to give another shout out to Joe Andreessen. That's the game that really put him on the map with when he played the whole game. And then he looked good against the Panthers, too. He struggled a little bit in coverage, but that's kind of like his thing. We knew he's not great in coverage, but
that's another thing that's not expected of linebackers that much in the NFL is really
we're just really lucky with having
5 guys in the entire league that are very good cover guys, like Fred Warner.
And we're lucky that we have Milano, who's one of them, and Terrell Bernard, who's kind of developed under Milano's wing into being a really good one. I think our system makes it easier on linebackers. I think McDermott and Babich are really good at making linebacker jobs easier in the pass game. But
we do a lot of Tampa 2 defense, so we cover most of the midfield game with just them being standing there. So realistically, there's not much that they have to do. They just have to back up, stand there, and wait for the ball to come across the middle and make a play.
Yeah, there was the miscommunication on that touchdown against the starters with Deion Jones and Andreessen. I am not sure whose fault it was. I don't know if they were playing man. I don't know if they were playing zone.
He's gone.
But that's what I'm hoping. But the way it looked like is they both went to the flats, but Deion Jones was actually kind of like standing up at the line towards the flats more. So I really don't know there was some miscommunication. They both ran to the flats, and Ian Thomas was wide open for a touchdown. Again, it probably was Deion Jones because I watched that Panthers game and he was just awful. As soon as I saw that, I'm like, yep, he's going to get caught. He was bad. And then the next day he got caught. Right. He's completely washed, and people were saying, "Ooh, what a good signing! He could be like our linebacker 3." I knew right away he was barely making the roster because he was already washed. But as soon as I saw that, I'm like, "No, he is done. He should just hang the cleats up. He can't do it anymore." And so, it's great to see Andreessen make the roster. And then, you were talking about Ingram. And again, to Corey Couch made some plays on defense as a corner. But overall, I kind of feel indifferent about the preseason. There's some things I like. There's some things I didn't like. But at the end of the day, you never really know. I mean, look at it last year. Everyone thought Kenny Pickett and George Pickens were going to run the league after they were lighting up the preseason. And then George Pickens had a good year, but now Kenny Pickett's the backup in Philly. Like, you never really know. Everyone's freaking out over Bo Nix being this insanely good quarterback in the preseason, but it's preseason. Like, give it a rest. Like, how often do players like dominate in the preseason or come out of nowhere, dominate in the preseason, and then like actually like back it up? Usually the good enough players don't play that much, and that's why these players you've never heard of are playing really good because they're playing against other nobodies. I mean, it's nice to see them play nice. I'd rather them play nice than bad, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't mean too much until you see them in an NFL game. But overall, I'm basically indifferent. Us going 1-2 doesn't bother me because really good teams suck all the time in the preseason. You're just trying out different things, trying out different plays, trying out players in different positions on areas on the field so you can get a feel for when the regular season comes. And Josh Allen out of the 12 quarters played one of them. So, and he is our team. So I'm not really too worried. But let's move on to the NFL as a whole. Yesterday, CeeDee Lamb finally signed his extension 4x136.
Got that bag.
What do you think this means for the other receivers holding out, like Jamar Chase and Brandon Ayuk?
I think that means that they are going to also get paid. And the thing is the NFL as a whole, not just the receiver position, just the NFL as a whole, it's as soon as a guy gets paid, it's like I view myself as better than him. And I think that Jamar Chase and Brandon Ayuk are going to be just like that. I think they're going to be like, well, I view myself as better than CeeDee Lamb. And while the 49ers and Bengals may not think that, and I don't think that personally either, it's just a vendetta thing. As a personal ego builder, basically. It's, in a sense, that's what players do. Look at Herbert and then Hurts and then Burrow. They're all just back to back to back, and they're all just getting slightly more than the last. And it's just that's what just keeps happening with Jordan Love all the way up there. And so that's the thing is it's just in the NFL, the way it works is, in my opinion, it's better to pay them just what they want when they want it before someone else gets the same price, and then now you got to pay them even more. And with Jamar Chase, I do think that at his best, he could definitely be on the same level, if not better than CeeDee Lamb. But Brandon Ayuk, I don't view as the same. But at the end of the day, I think they both are going to get very big paydays as well, probably in that 36.5 range, I would assume 36.5, slightly more than CeeDee Lamb potentially. For the 49ers, that's very bad. But anyway, they'll figure it out, I guess. With Jamar Chase, though, I do think that his is a little bit more interesting now. I mean, Brandon Ayuk's whole thing has kind of calmed down. And Jamar Chase is a very interesting case for the simple fact that it doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy to hold out the entire season like a Brandon Ayuk would have given off of. And so realistically, it's interesting to see when they get that deal. It's almost like a Lamar situation where it's like as soon as the season starts, he's going to stop negotiations and it's going to carry out to the offseason. And so I do think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. But with Brandon Ayuk, I think the deal is almost pretty much in the works by now. I'm sure by week 1 we'll probably have some news on him. But for right now, I do think that just means they're going to get very big paydays considering that's normally how it goes.
Yeah, well, Jamar Chase actually reported back to practice, and they already said he is playing week 1. So I don't think Jamar Chase gets that extension because I think he wants to
I don't think he gets
it
until the offseason.
Because as you said, I think he wants to get 36, but the Bengals want to be like, we're willing, but we want to see this year. We want to see, can you put up what you put in your rookie year, what you were putting up until you got injured in your second year. This year, kind of a down year, but a little bit. But you can also blame that Burrow. He had some lingering injuries. So I'm not going to put it totally on him, but he still had a really good year. So I think they're going to want to wait. But Brandon Ayuk, I don't think he gets CeeDee Lamb money. I mean, CeeDee Lamb did get Justin Jefferson money, so it wasn't always like, oh, I think I'm better than him. And CeeDee Lamb could make that argument. He outproduced him last year. He was the number 1 wide receiver. I mean, fantasy wise, but I think yards wise, like he was the best. So like he could have been like, oh, did you see me last year versus Jefferson? But he didn't get that. So it makes me think that I think Brandon Ayuk will be more in the A.J. Brown range, 32, 33. I think he gets a little bit less than CeeDee. But I think Jamar, I think he'll ask for 36 because, one, he was drafted 4th overall, had that crazy rookie season, and then since then, every year of his career has been that top-level guy. Ayuk hasn't. This was Ayuk's first year of being a top-level guy. So I think he'll get more like 32, 33, but I think Ayuk will end up getting that massive, probably beats Jetta's contract. I just think it won't happen until next year. But also, the CeeDee Lamb extension doesn't just affect other wide receivers; it affects the Cowboys. How do you think this extension affects the Cowboys and their extensions with Dak and Micah?
Well, the thing is I really like to move for Dallas regardless. At the end of the day, you had to get it done, and it's better to get it done before the season and not have the distraction lingering. Of course, you still have to extend 2 big-name guys in Dak and Micah Parsons. Of course, Micah Parsons is my top priority in that situation. He is by far like one of the top 3 defensive players in the league, in my opinion. He's right up there with Garrett and Watt. I do think that he's a very, very good player. He's really the face of the defense now that DeMarcus Lawrence is starting to kind of hit that Cameron Jordan phase where he's starting to fall down the ranks a little bit. I do think that the defensive backs in Trayvon Diggs and DaRon Bland are very good as well. I think DaRon Bland's a little bit better than Trayvon Diggs personally. I think Diggs is just too aggressive. That's his problem. But other than that, I do think that Mike Parsons is going to be a big leader on that defense. And without him, this defense is pretty much like the Bills' offense without Josh. And I know that's a bold statement to say, but I really think that that's true. I don't see anybody making an impact like Micah Parsons on their defense. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins DPOY this year. He's going to be in the running the whole year, in my opinion. And so, it, of course, it's going to affect those things because you only have a certain number of cap that you can use each year. And for Jerry Jones, this is a big-time get right here because, honestly, if Jamar Chase would have got this 36, you're probably talking about having to pay CD 37, 38 because then he can make that argument that he's better again. And that's just what it is. And I'm better than you, and you think you're better than me thing in the NFL. And it happens all the time. We see it with the quarterbacks, like I mentioned, and every other position really. So at the end of the day, I do think that it's a very smart decision to get him locked up. Just keep away from the distractions. CeeDee Lamb is a very, very good receiver. One of the top 5 in the league, in my opinion. He's right up there with Hill, Chase, and Jefferson. And so with that being said, it's better to get it done now and out of the way.
No, I totally agree. I think you give Parsons that, and then I think you pay Dak, give him what he wants, but give him on a short term. I was saying he's probably going to want closer to 60.
I think 3 years.
That's what I was saying. 3 by 170.
3 years, 180.
If you can try 170, 170 sets the AAV market because the market's at 55. So if you go,
no, it's not about the AAV market though. For me, it's more so about the fact with Dak. Dak already mentioned so many times during the offseason he wants a 4 or 5 year deal. So for it to be a 3-year deal, it'd have to be more. You'd have to pay him more. And I think right now, as it is, he gets 56, 57. And then after you factor in 3 years, it's almost 60 mil. So I'm thinking probably 3 years, 58 million AAV is where I would be expecting it to be at. So probably in the 170 range, 174 mil.
Yeah, 3 year, 170 to 180 in that range with 130 guaranteed. And then you go and look for the successor because Dak's already, I think, 32. So even if you think Dak is this stud that you can win a Super Bowl with, his time is getting closer. When he's 35, you're going to want to extend him then. No, you go and get his successor, and then
you're talking almost like a Kirk Cousins situation.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are saying, I just want to ditch him now and then try and get the successor. But the way you do that is through the draft, and the draft is a crapshoot. So why would you give up Dak, who at least you're going to be good and competitive, when you could get a successor? And if it doesn't, you get it after this offseason. If it doesn't work out, you'll know through practice. Game's one thing, but just kind of like how the Niners knew with Trey Lance after playing 3 career games, they knew that Brock Purdy was better, mostly because of what they saw in practice when the two were against the two battling. You can see a lot in practice. You're going to be able to know in 2 or 3 years if he's a bum or if he's got it. And then once that, then okay, we're good to get rid of Dak. You trade him and get some assets. And then if you don't think he's ready, then you go and get a different guy. You just play quarterback roulette, and then the more bullets you have in the chamber, the higher chances you have to hit. So might as well draft a guy this year. You don't think he works out in 2 years, you draft another guy. And then by then, if you still don't think he works out, maybe you extend Dak again and you try another guy. And you just keep trying until you find someone who can replace Dak. And then you trade Dak, get some assets, and then you can really build a team with a good Dak's good. I think he's borderline top 10, but by PFF grades, at least, he's been the worst quarterback in the last 5 years behind, funny enough, Lamar Jackson, who somehow was able to skate by being that awful in the postseason because two MVPs, but I thought playoff
MVP
is what mattered most.
Literally the worst. Yeah. Worst year we've seen in forever that a quarterback won.
The first MVP definitely deserved this one bogus, but that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, it's just funny how Lamar is statistically one of the worst quarterbacks ever in the playoffs, and no one ever talks about it. Or if you do talk about it, you're a hater because he has 2 MVPs. But anyways, right. Dak has not been very good. He's had some good games, but he's also had games like the Packers where he had 87 yards and 2 picks in the first half. So, yeah, their defense was also a big reason why they lost because they couldn't stop a nosebleed. But if you can't, the offense was bad in the first half, dug himself a hole, then, yeah, he had a bunch of garbage yards, which helped win me some money, but that's something completely different. But, yeah, Dak just doesn't play great in the playoffs. And even in the regular season, this past year, yeah, he was, honestly, in my opinion, should have been number 2 in MVP behind Josh. But he had a really, really good year. Him and CeeDee found a connection, but then he plays that good in the regular season and falls off in the playoffs against the Packers, who don't have an awful defense, but it's not like he was facing the Ravens or the 49ers defense. I didn't have the balls to actually say, oh, the Packers are going to win, but I was I would have definitely, if I was a betting man, I was definitely taking the Packers to cover the spread. I knew that game was going to be really close, and I was not shocked when they won.
It wasn't even a 3-point win. I picked them to win by 10, and they dominated that game too.
I wasn't shocked when they won the game. I just wouldn't have had the balls to pick it because in 2 or 7's never beaten a 2. So
right,
that's a little surprising.
Well, it's the Cowboys. They.
Yes. But on to other NFL news. There is a couple of news from other teams, like the Broncos. They cut Tim Patrick and Samaje Perine. Perine was or not Perine. Patrick was picked up by the Lions, and then a couple players going on IR. Keandre Miller and AJ Dillon. They're both on IR. I'm not sure if Keandre was designated to return or if he's done for the year, but I know AJ Dillon went on season-ending IR, so he's out for the year. What are your thoughts on the couple of these moves? We'll probably see more as like throughout waivers as stuff gets claimed. There'll probably be more moves throughout the week. Oh, another one, Terrence Marshall got cut. Noah Brown got cut. Yep. So a lot of movement between running backs and wide receivers. So what are your thoughts? Are there any guys that you would like the Bills to pick up, or are you just hoping the Bills just stay set at where they at?
I think we're going to stay set with what we're at. We've seen every year in the Brandon Beane era, he really hasn't made those kind of moves. And I'm going to run through this a little quickly, but there's a lot of different players I think that are insane. So we're going to start off with Desmond Ridder. I mean, you traded Rondale Moore for him, who was honestly your best target you've had and probably since Larry Fitzgerald left. And so you guys trade Rondale Moore to him and
D-Hop.
Stuff like that.
You forgot about D-Hop.
Sorry. That's my fault. That's my bad. I don't know about
I was going to say.
Anyway, Rondale Moore is still a very good option. And if it wasn't for the injury this year, I think he would have been a starter for the Falcons, probably in the slot. And so the thing is to give up what you gave up for him and then just cut him. It's obviously a big loss for Arizona. Another big thing is going to be the Bailey Zappi cut. I really like this decision. I think Joe Milton, and I'm going to put this right here on this podcast right now, I would not be surprised if he does what Kirk Cousins did to RG3.
You're crazy. You are crazy. You are crazy.
Drake May has looked mid, in my opinion, in this preseason. Yes.
Bro, I'm going to say
it right now.
To me, he's looked like the best rookie quarterback.
Bo Nix has looked the best out of the rookies in the preseason.
I think Drake May has looked better than Bo Nix.
Here's the thing. Joe Milton
that is shocking.
Is an absolute freak of an athlete. He can bomb that football with a flick of a wrist. I'm telling you, flicking his wrist, he can throw it 65 yards. That's talent right there. And it's on the money. He's very accurate. He went to a mid school to a lot of people in Tennessee. Yeah, very mid.
What mid school? They're in the SEC.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they're in the middle of the pack. They're not a championship contender, and they're not terrible. So they've
been ranked the last couple of years. They've been a top 5 SEC school.
They've been great because of players like Milton and everyone else on the roster. But here's the thing, though. With Joe Milton, I do think that he is a very solid quarterback. And if it's not with the Patriots, I could definitely see him starting somewhere else. And if it is going to be – I could see it happening. I really could see it happening where Drake May doesn't end up becoming what everyone thinks he's going to become. And I'm one of the biggest Drake May advocates out there. You can ask Alex because of this podcast that we did for Buffalo Sports Insider, not sponsored, but Buffalo Sports Insider for the draft, man. For the draft, I was one of his biggest advocates over him being drafted under Jaden Daniels. But here's the thing. I really do think that it could happen. I do think Joe Milton's got a chance to be a potential starter in this league. He's better than a player like Bo Nix to me. He's better than a Gardner Minshew. I think he could start for the Saints even. The Saints don't have a good quarterback option really with Spencer Rattler. He's been very solid. And then, Derek Carr, who is way past his prime. And then moving on, I guess, in a sense, here. I think that's a bold statement.
No. Let me respond to this real quick.
Let him give him the rebuttal.
Talk to any Tennessee fan ever. They say Joe Milton is like the practice god. In practice and preseason and games that don't matter against the bad competition when they would play like their cupcake teams, he would look amazing because he's got all the tools. You're right. He is this 6'5" absolute monster that can throw it 65 yards on the dime. But he just every year it's like, if he can put it all together. If he can put it all together. He couldn't at Tennessee. That's why he fell all the way to the 6th round. Do you know how rare it is for like toolsy quarterbacks like that?
You can say the same thing about Kirk Cousins coming out of the draft.
Kirk Cousins
I know, but I'm saying you can say the same thing about him, though.
But here's
Kirk Cousins
the thing.
Was that guy.
toolsy quarterbacks get drafted like much higher than they're supposed to because they're like, oh, if they can put it together with these tools. Like, think about it. Josh Allen, straight prospect, if he didn't have the tools he did, would have probably been a day 3 guy. But his tools, and then he was able to develop, and now he's an absolute beast. Same thing with Justin Herbert. He was a toolsy guy that got drafted higher because he was a toolsy guy.
You're advocating for me even more.
No, Joe Milton has the exact same situation. They were drafted in the first round because they were tools. Joe Milton has better tools than them. You would think, oh, someone would probably take a shot on him earlier. He fell all the way to the 6th round for a reason because these teams realize, yeah, he's got all the tools. He just can't put it all together. He can't read a defense. He just sticks on to one guy.
In the right system, any player can succeed, man. I'm so serious.
He could be a decent backup. Where if you have a running quarterback, like, yeah, maybe if I'm the Ravens, I'd want him as my backup because it's like the running system. He could fit in there well. But as a backup. But to say he has a chance of beating a Drake May, who's one of the best QB prospects in the last couple of years, you say you're high on him. I'm just as high, if not higher, on Drake May. I think he is an absolute bona fide beast. I think by this time next year, we're talking about him being the second best quarterback in the AFC East over Tua. And Rodgers being at his age, I think.
That's a low bar to me. But at the end of the day,
I think you're making an argument. I think their situation's really bad. And if you watch their games, I mean, look at it with Washington. He was just making some really high level throws. The game before that, but going into it, everyone was like, oh, it's Jacoby Brissett. Gerard Mayo was even saying, oh, Jacoby Brissett's starting. Drake May's played good enough where he's like, I don't know. He literally has gotten him like we're set in stone. Jacoby Brissett starting the year. Drake May's played well enough where he might have just taken that job from Brissett. And Brissett hasn't even played that bad. Everyone knows he's a decent bridge quarterback, good backup, can play some games. And Drake May is kind of just stealing that. Yeah, he's stealing that right under from him because Drake May has been outplaying Jacoby Brissett. He's making a lot of these
Again, the same argument can be said, though, because it's preseason. And at the end of the day, it's another argument that, again, RG3 had an amazing rookie year. He gets injured, and all of a sudden out-trots Kirk Cousins, and here he is, playing very good.
RG3 was much different quarterback than Drake May.
Kirk Cousins didn't end up being the guy in Washington long-term. He ended up going to Minnesota for that. And I do think it's a very similar situation for Joe Milton where he could go and be a starter somewhere else like New Orleans. Here's the thing, though. With Drake May, I do think Drake May has all the talent in the world. I do think Drake May can be a very, very good quarterback. It's just a very tough thing to gauge anymore, especially with players coming out of the smaller schools like North Carolina and BYU. They're in a very similar spot. They're not the greatest teams.
Drake May was a completely different prospect than Zach Wilson. Completely different than Zach Wilson. The fact no. That's psychotic. That is crazy. And BYU during the COVID year were the best team they played as Coastal Carolina versus North Carolina and the ACC. Probably at least 5 or 6 of the teams that Drake May played would destroy any of the teams BYU played that year. And BYU had some draftable talent on that team too. Drake May's best receiver was Tez Walker, who was a day 3 guy and was honestly not that good. Like he had no one to throw to.
Tez Walker is not the greatest. I know.
Yeah, but and he was his wide receiver 1, and Drake May still put up good numbers in a Power 5 conference. I understand the ACC is not as good as the Big Ten. It's not as good as the SEC. Right. Hasn't been great lately, but it's still got some good talent. I mean, Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, they're always competitive teams every single year. Like, I'm not going to – no, that's completely different. Drake May was at a Power 5 school and played some real competition. Zach Wilson was at BYU during the COVID year, and they scheduled a bunch of schmuck teams. Like, that's not –
No. I'm just saying talent-wise. They're both very similar in what they were expected to do. They're coming from decent schools, none of the higher schools like Bama or Notre Dame or any of these other crazy schools. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, I do think Drake May starts. I do think Drake May is a very capable starter in the league. I'm just saying there's always fate sometimes with these things where he could get injured and you see Joe Milton work his way in. Things like that can happen anytime in the NFL, and we've seen it happen before with Kirk Cousins. Obviously, he
Well,
didn't start full time in
wanna
Washington. They wanted to keep going with RG3,
I
and
want to break
RG3
down
just
that
never made it
situation.
work.
That
It's
situation's
a weird
different, though.
situation. No,
That
it's
situation's
a very
different
weird
because
situation.
here, let me explain how that Washington situation is different. RG3 was that athletic, toolsy guy that was running around like crazy. Then he got injured and lost a step, and that's why it was that leg injury. He had a brutal torn ACL. He lost a step, and he relied so much on his athleticism that when he lost a step, it showed that he wasn't the greatest passer. Kirk Cousins was more like the Drake May, the sit back pocket passer. I mean, Drake May is very athletic and run. Kirk really could, but he was more of that pro ready pocket passer, and he was also drafted in the
Drake May
fourth
to
round
me
versus the
reminds me of
sixth.
Justin Herbert. That's who he reminds
And
me of.
we saw how Justin Herbert came into a bad situation, his rookie year, and tore it up. Bad offensive line. Yeah, Keenan Allen was way better than any Patriot receiver, but
Right.
there wasn't much to work with on that Chargers team. And yeah, the team didn't do good because there again wasn't much talent. But Herbert was putting up some really good numbers. Yeah, you just compared him.
Broke the touchdown record that year.
Exactly. Had like the yards record or close to the yards record. Like he was absolutely tearing.
Yeah, he was
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing, though.
I think that's a
just
really
never
good
know in the
comparison.
NFL who you're going to get. And, I mean, yeah, you can scout as much as you want, and these guys scout for, like, the entire year, and you just never know what you're going to get. So that's all I'm saying is there's definitely a chance here. I can see some similarities, and that's all I'm mentioning. But to continue,
yes,
another thing here,
to talk about.
some more headlines here. And I literally wrote on my paper, I'm going to make headlines with my remark. I literally put in parentheses, it's probably going to, like, boom. But anyway, Terrence Marshall, as you mentioned, was another guy who got caught, former second-round pick by the Panthers out of LSU. I thought he had a lot of very good tools. I just think that Carolina didn't use him right. I think they were trying to put him in the slot in his first year. Didn't work. He was more of the big body guy on the outside, and they just kind of kept throwing him in the slot. I didn't care for that idea. Obviously, Matt Rule wasn't the greatest play caller to begin with. So, yeah, didn't kind of set up for failure from the beginning. Moving into another guy, Jackson Carman, the offensive lineman for Cincinnati, another move that I was very shocked about. He started a lot of games last year, so it's interesting to see him get cut. Another move afterwards was Noah Brown, the receiver by the Houston Texans. And if the Bills went after anybody, it'd be Noah Brown, in my opinion. I think he'd be the only one I'd be accepting of in that situation.
What about Terrence Marshall?
He's very good. We already got that.
I'm just saying because of that Joe Brady connection.
Yeah, true. But at the same time, Noah Brown is a better receiver. I think Noah Brown's more fundamentally sound. I think Noah Brown is just a decent option. Very good depth piece. Third or fourth wide receiver on a team can provide some solid depth.
That's fair.
And the problem is with Noah Brown is he's on a team right now that's loaded. Like, yeah, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, the list goes on. There's Xavier Hutchinson, the rookie out of second year now out of Oregon, 7th round pick, came out of nowhere. He played great in the Hall of Fame game and pretty solid for the rest of the preseason. He made his way into that spot, and then it's just Noah Brown makes $4 or $5 million. Xavier Hutchinson on a rookie deal, less than $1 million. Save cap space where you can and cut your losses with Noah Brown. And that's exactly what happens. And another thing there, situation-wise, is Adrian Amos, another one cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I really used to like him. Very good safety for the Bears. Went to the Broncos, now the Jags. Started literally 2 years ago. I'm surprised they would get rid of him. Obviously not starter material, but at least as a backup. Got to be at least solid, in my opinion, right? I mean, very experienced veteran guy who can come in and make plays when he needs to. I think he's just that guy where if you're lackadaisical, he can tear you up. And it's just one of those things where he's just going to try to beat you with his mental IQ. He's going to bait you into those throws. And that's what he did with Chicago in 2018. He looked great. Same with the Broncos for the most part. He was solid. It's just
he was good on the Packers too.
Yeah, Green Bay as well. So Green Bay right before Denver. And that's the thing, though. I think that he definitely could have been a backup at least. Isaiah Hodgins and Mike White are two other ones. Isaiah Hodgins, I understand because you got Jalen Hyatt, you got Wan'Dale Robinson, you got, of course, Malik Neighbors. You got all these guys for the Giants. You're not going to be able to get the most out of Hodgins. And so release him. Similar to the Noah Brown. It's just the Giants right now, and I'm not even going to lie to you, and this is another one you might disagree with, so bear with me here, but I think the Giants' receiving room is coming into shape to be a lot like the Packers right now, where they got a lot of very young talent that's solid. And the thing is obviously Malik clears anybody in that Packers receiving room, of course, but Christian Watson, Jalen Hyatt, not that much different. Deontay Wicks and Wan'Dale Robinson games too. And so the thing is I wouldn't
rookie
be surprised
tight
if
ends.
the Giants receiving. Yeah, the rookie tight ends too with Theo Johnson. I really like that addition as well for them. But the thing is there was just no room for Hodgins. They want to see what they've got in their young talent, and that makes sense. I mean, Hodgins is going into his age 26, 27 season, so really no real hope for him to develop into an elite player, just a solid depth piece. And the Giants are like, well, we need to see what we have in these other guys first before we can keep these guys. So it makes sense. Another big thing with Mike White, though, I mean, he's a solid backup. We saw what he did with the Jets was pretty good. But at the end of the day, it's not a big barn burner move. And the last move I want to talk about here was Caleb Farley, a cornerback for the Tennessee Titans, first round, 24th overall back a few years ago. Very, very great. I loved Caleb Farley. I wanted us to draft him that year. It's the year we ended up getting Elam instead. I had Andrew Booth and Caleb Farley ahead.
I thought Farley was the year before. I thought Farley was the Rousseau draft, yeah.
Yes, Farley was the Rousseau year. You're correct. But
and he went Caleb before Farley, we were able to take. Yep.
Coming out of the draft, everybody was so upset that the Bills didn't get him. And I ended up kind of switching my tune after the draft ended and saying that he reminded me of a player named Jason Verrett. Some may be familiar, some may not. He played for the Chargers and was injured, tore his ACL in back-to-back seasons, his left and then his right. Caleb Farley just can't stay healthy. Neither could Verrett. Very solid top-end talent when he's on the field. He knows what he can do. And the thing is, it's just once that happens to you so much, you can only run so fast. You can only move so quick. You can only turn so fast. And it starts to weigh on you. Look at RG3, like you mentioned, with all the freak injuries that happened, like the freak injury that happened to him. Farley's had that happen 3 or 4 times now, and it's just he can't stay healthy. He's had 2 season-ending injuries, and last year a partial Achilles tear that left him out until week 13 from the first 2 weeks of the season. So it's like you can't stay healthy. You're not going to make a roster in the NFL anymore, especially if it's happening this consistently. And so it's tough for him. I do feel bad for Caleb Farley. He is a solid player. It's just a very similar situation to Jason Verrett for me. Verrett ended up signing with the 49ers and making an impact. That's why I mentioned him in this, because I think if Caleb Farley does get signed by someone else, he could make a very good impact like Jason Verrett did with San Francisco in their 2019 season and their run a couple of years ago when they lost to the Chiefs. Not to the Chiefs, but to somebody in the NFC Championship game there. But
the Rams.
Oh, the Rams, my bad. But yeah, very solid as well. At the end of the day, though, I do think that these are a lot of big-name guys. There's a lot of stuff moving, a lot of moving parts. For the Lions, though, with Tim Patrick, I like that move. I do think they needed somebody else in that room. I think him and Donovan Peoples-Jones are basically even, and it's just going to come down to which one ends up.
They cut Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Oh, so yeah. Well, the thing is, though, is basically he's replacing Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Yeah, and I think Tim Patrick's better, so I like that for them too.
Tim Patrick is better because he's worked with less than Donovan Peoples-Jones has. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, we'll see. I think that the not Aaron Jones, but A.J. Dillon move is tough for the Packers, not the Packers.
Yeah, he was going to be the RB3 on that team, though.
Yeah. We'll see, though. I do think that this
one name you did forget that when we were talking about Caleb Farley, it made me think of Lewis Cine, the former first-round pick, got cut by the Vikings. He's also someone who had a brutal injury that kind of derailed their career. If anyone remember that Vikings, it was in London. I forgot. I think it was maybe Vikings Bengals.
Saints.
Vikings Saints. Yep. It was Vikings Saints, and he had a gruesome.
It was near the end of the game because I remember they ended up losing on that Will Lutz field goal.
Yeah, no, that was brutal and that kind of derailed his career, and now he got cut. So hopefully he can recover and get a job somewhere else. Because he was again a first round pick, so he has a lot of potential, but injuries suck, man. I think that's it for the NFL. We kind of went a little bit over schedule, but nothing wrong with that. We'll move into MLB now. Yeah. Into MLB, Thomas. We'll start off with Thomas talking about his New York Mets. What's some updates about them that have been going on lately?
Man, I've been absolutely surprised with us. Right now, we are 68-63, just above 500. We're 6-4 in our last 10. We're very mid. That's at the end of the day, we're very mid, and I'm a diehard Mets fan. So honestly, very surprised that we're even this good. I'm not going to lie to you. If anything, I would expect 63 and 68 if we were this close. I feel like we're more closer to negative 10 wins in a sense. I feel like we should probably be around 58 to 68 record-wise. But at the end of the day, I do think that it's the pitching depth that's really killing us this season. The lack of pitching depth has been absolutely brutal. But we've made it work with guys like Quintana, Diaz, Severino, Ottavino, of course. A lot of these guys. I really like Reed Garrett, pardon. I always get that wrong because they're literally the first and last name are both the same. I do think that they're both like solid options though, him and Diaz for the ending, but realistically, Garrett's more of a relief pitcher. So we'll see what ends up happening. I do think that we're not going to make it far if we make the playoffs, but if we make a playoff spot, I'll be genuinely surprised. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do. We're 30 games back right now. The Braves, they're like 71 and something, 60, I believe.
71 and 60.
So
71 and 60.
Yeah, we're like right there. We're right behind them. We have a series coming up against the Braves in September, so that's exciting. Hopefully we can get that done. But you look at the hit this year, and Alonso, of course, Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor, yeah. Obviously, like move along. We already knew you guys were going to be the big two that we needed. They've carried this entire season. But one guy no one understands as good as Mark Vientos, bro. 21 homers this year. He's third on the team in that stat. He's been phenomenal for us out of nowhere, bro. Him and Tyrone Taylor have been the biggest shocks to me this entire year. They've both been nuts. And it's just like who are you? And now it's like, oh, yeah, let's go. Good job. And it's a situation that's weird. You got guys like Bader and Martinez there too, the veteran guys that have played exceptionally well. And of course, McNeil's always going to be a consistent player in this lineup. McNeil's one of my favorites as well. The NL batting champ from a few years ago too. So yeah, but overall solid season. I mean, we're okay. We're not bad. We're not good. At the end of the day, I'd like us to be a little bit better, of course. But I feel like right now, the way we're looking at with Alonso getting up there, with Lindor getting up there, I think it might be time to just blow it up, try and start over from scratch, like with players like Beatty and Diaz in the future. You got a lot of things that are like, I don't know, and it's like, so because of that, I do think we're doing all right. We've had a solid year, but at the end of the day, same old Mets, baby.
Yeah. One player I did want to mention about the Mets, I don't pay attention to him too much, but I know he's been playing pretty well, is Francisco Alvarez. What are your thoughts on him so far?
Bro, honestly, I've just been intrigued with most of the team. There's been a lot of guys on this team that's been interesting. Of course, Alvarez came into the season not really with the highest expectations. None of the team did, really, at the end of the day. None of us did. But he's been up there too. Honestly, if it wasn't for Vientos and Taylor kind of taking that spotlight from him, I would definitely think of Alvarez a lot higher. He's very consistent. It's just at the same time, he's either on or he's not, is what I'm saying. He's either every game he's doing great, 7 and 8 in a row, where he's just like consistently getting a hit or two a game, or he's got the games where he gets none in a row, like an entire series against the Padres where we get shut out in like three of the 4 games. And it's like, yo, like it's brutal. It's a brutal season.
We'll bring it over to the better team in New York. I'm going to talk about my Yankees for a little bit. As you see in the background, I have some Yankees stuff. I'm a Yankees fan. First thing I want to say is, oh my God, Aaron Judge, you are just on another. I can't comprehend it. Like, just these numbers he's putting up. He literally, this past week, he had 7 home runs in 6 games. He's on pace to get 63 now. He's on pace to beat his record that everyone thought, oh, he's not going to touch that again. And he's doing it, but with doing everything else better. Like, everyone thought, oh, 2022 was going to be his peak. What a great year. You could argue one of the greatest ever. He's now in the same home run total, but he's got a better batting average, better on-base percentage, better OPS, better slugging, better OPS plus, higher WAR. One of the craziest stats is his slugging. I think I was looking at earlier, it's like 740 something. The MLB average for OPS, which for anyone who doesn't understand is on-base plus slugging, is like 710. His slugging alone is higher than the MLB average player of their on-base plus their slugging. It is unheard of. Yes. It doesn't make any sense. OPS plus, which is kind of like an overall
MVP situation now. Before,
I mean, it's absurd. And then you want to bring up OPS plus, which is like an overall
stat.
Like
it brings in 2018 season, man. It's just like you can't. Argue anything.
It brings up, like, if anyone who doesn't understand what OPS is, it basically brings in every hitting stat, where you're playing, who you're playing against, so it's like just pure hitting independent, like no other factors. They're all taken out. The MLB average for that is like 100. If you have an 100 OPS plus, you're an average hitter. Aaron Judge is at 229. One of the only players who has ever had a higher OPS plus in a single season. Barry Bonds when he was on steroids, and Babe Ruth once. That's the list. I think Judge is even better than some of the Bonds steroid. I think it's like Bonds 04, Bonds 2001, Bonds 2002, and then like Babe Ruth, and then Judge. So this is the second greatest, like based on that metric, the second greatest clean hitting season ever. Behind it, Babe Ruth I'll give Babe Ruth his flowers, one of the greatest ever, but I mean, it was in the 1920s when pitchers are throwing 80 miles an hour with not much movement. Now he's facing 95 mile an hour that moves from one end of the strike zone to the other. Like it doesn't make any sense.
He's facing 80 mile per hour curveballs.
It's crazy, and he's putting up these stuff. Yeah, he's putting up insane numbers, and it's crazy enough that he's putting up
the other day for the Mets. Sorry to cut you off, but Severino the other day had an 86 on his curveball.
Damn. That's crazy. Yeah. And then, but Judge is having this crazy year that Juan Soto's year gets not talked about. And he's having a career year. If he was in the NL right now, he'd be walking away with the MVP, but his teammate's Aaron Judge. So, like, he's batting like 300. His on base is like 450. His slugging's like almost 7, or his slugging's like 650 something. Yeah, his OPS is like 1,050. He has like 37 home runs right now. Like, he is at 190 OPS plus. Like, he's having a career year, and no one talks about it because, well, Aaron Judge is doing Aaron Judge things. It doesn't make any sense. But then I want to talk about some other players in the team. Gleyber Torres, since they moved him to the leadoff position, he has been on fire. I think that's where he's most comfortable. Last year, he was the leadoff guy, and he had his best year since, like, 2019. Like, I think he's best at the leadoff spot. When players like Judge and Soto are hitting behind him, he gets to see a lot more pitches, and he's really good at working the count. He's like 8th in the AL and like pitches seen per at bat. He's really good at drawing some walks, getting some singles. He's not having the craziest power, but if he can get a walk and a single every single game in front of Soto and Judge, I'm totally happy with that. Like, just get on base a couple of times, let Soto and Judge do the damage, because when he gets on base, it puts pressure on Soto. It's like, with his such good eye, it's like,
it also puts pressure on the pitcher though, because
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It puts.
Yeah.
It puts pressure on the pitcher.
One thing they tell you all the time is don't try to be fancy. Don't try to pitch around these guys and get them to swing at things they wouldn't swing at. Because at the end of the day, those 7-8 pitch at bats that he sees all the time with Gleyber Torres, it wears out pitchers so fast. Yeah. Because you're talking, he bats 3 times, 4 times in a game. That pitcher runs through 30, 40 pitches for just one dude. And it's like at the end of the day, you have to relieve so much quicker because you can't, especially in high school, man. Those are the guys that are valued so highly in high school are the guys that can like just
work
wait.
Counts.
Just wait.
Well, then you get you get to Soto and Judge. They're like the two most patient players in baseball. They already each have over 100 walks, and it's not even September yet. Like so then you get to Torres. Now it's like
people pitchers are like
it's like, do you want to pitch around Soto? Because what happens if you pitch around Soto? He's going to draw a walk. Now you have runners on first and second, no outs. You have Aaron Judge up. What are you going to walk him? Okay. Now you have bases loaded with Giancarlo Stanton, who's had a resurgence, and Austin Wells, who is playing like a top 5 catcher in baseball this year as a rookie. Like, it's not like last year where it was like, okay, maybe Torres can get on. Yeah, last year it was like Torres may get a single. Okay, just walk Judge, and you could probably get everyone else out because that lineup was just absolutely terrible last year. It was so bad. Yeah. But now that they have Soto, now that Stan's come back and has looked healthier and is better, Austin Wells with his resurgence, getting Jazz Chisholm, like this lineup is the best it's looked in a couple of years. So it's like, okay, you want to walk Soto and Judge? We finally have players that can damage you for it. So you actually have to pitch to those guys. And pitching to Soto and Judge, it doesn't really end up very well, as we've seen this year. And they're playing absolutely insane. And then the pitching they started off the year guns a-blazing. The starters were insane. Then they went through a rough patch. Garrett Cole, I think, is finally getting healthy. He's getting back into normal. He didn't have a great start tonight. 3 earned in 5 innings against the Nationals. Not great, but he's had the last couple starts before that. Nestor Cortez, want to give a huge shout out. Had like 20 straight innings without allowing a run before he allowed a home run in the 7th last night. So, I mean, I want to give a shout out to him. Carlos Rodon's been better. Marcus Stroman, since he tweaked some mechanics, has been a lot better. So those guys, I want to give a shout out. The bullpen, it definitely needs a lot of work. Clay Holmes should not be a closer, but got to blame Brian Cashman for there's an obvious weakness, but why would Cashman fix it? That would just make too much sense, and Cashman's an idiot. So, of course, they don't go and get a closer, and now you have Cardiac Clay as the closer, and he just blows games, which some of them are unlucky, but it's also his fault for allowing bait because he just a lot of times will allow like a walk and a single, and then there goes an error, there goes some stupid bloop single, and now it's a tie game. Like
in the 8th inning, you allowed the single and the walk.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a little unlucky that happens, and that happened. He's lost a couple of games off some like just BS stuff like that. But if he didn't allow those runners, like, and the 9th inning, you want a guy that'll just strike out. And Clay Holmes isn't that. He kind of works counts. He allows a lot of hits. So, I don't really like it. The bullpen definitely needs some work. It has not been super strong. And then also tonight's game, they lost 4-2, very, very Yankee style. They had Garrett Cole pitching, and the Nationals had the worst starter in baseball pitching, and he decided to throw 6 shutout innings against the Yankees. That was kind of upsetting, but that's a classic Yankees game. We still have the best record in the AL. We kind of are I want to venture into the next topic. We kind of already were bringing up MVP, how Judge is basically walking away with it. Who would your pick be in the NL?
I like Nola a lot, and pitching, I do think he's been very good. There's a lot of good options in the NL. Honestly, I feel like it's not clear cut and dry like the AL with Aaron Judge. I do think another guy I would like to mention here is going to be a little bit weird, but it's going to end up being somebody I think that everybody kind of understands, and that's Bryce Harper. He's had another good year for the Phillies. The Phillies are looking insane again, and it's just, I mean, I'm not overwhelmingly like happy with any of the candidates. That's why it's like I'm not like, oh my God, Aaron Judge is insane.
Yeah.
And Aaron Judge has kind of made me lose all happiness for the NL because it's like no one's nearly as great. Yeah. And it's like, you got Aaron Judge, and then you got this guy.
Yeah. For me, I think with Ketel Marte's injury, unfortunately, I think I would have given it to him, but I think with him getting injured, I think it's going to be Shohei's award to lose. He's about to have a 50-50 season, which has never happened before. I get he's a DH, not fielding, but Bryce Harper's really cooled off the second half. And if we're at the All-Star break, I'm saying Bryce Harper, but he has cooled off. Maybe he can turn it on. We've seen what Bryce can do in September. He can have some crazy stretches, so I'm not counting him out yet. But right now, it's Shohei to lose. But it's crazy the difference between the NL and the AL, because the top 4 guys in the AL would all win it in the NL. Like, you got Gunnar Henderson, who is playing elite defense, base runner, is probably going to have 40 home runs, hitting like 270, 280, and he's not even talked about in the MVP race anymore. And he's playing really good defense at the most important, because then you have Juan Soto, who, as I already mentioned, his numbers. Then you have Bobby Witt Jr., who is like everyone. If you look at Aaron Judge, that's a walk away MVP.
Bobby Witt Jr. is the Corbin Carroll.
He is making it really hard. He is making it really hard for Judge to just walk away with it. Judge has to keep this up, because Judge will do some insane stuff, and then Bobby Witt's hitting 350. Bobby Witt has Bobby Witt's one of the best base runners in baseball. He's like the fastest player in baseball. He's like 30-something stolen bases. Is the best fielder in baseball at shortstop, which is the second most defensive or important defensive position behind catcher. While also hitting over 350. His OPS is over 1,000. So it's not like he's having a bad offensive year. He's crazy. And then if you look at WAR, Judge, I think on pace for like 11.5, 11.6, which is insane. Bobby Witt's on pace for like a 10-5, 11 WAR season. Like, he's very close behind. He's statistically, if you look at it, you can make an argument he's having the greatest shortstop season of all time, and he's not even going to win MVP because of what Aaron Judge is doing. It's
exactly.
Crazy,
and that's the thing, though.
This is like one of the greatest MVP races ever.
Yeah, it's in the AL at least. In the AL, at least.
Yeah, in the AL. The NL is a very weak one. The AL is one of the greatest ever.
Even Stanton's looked insane too for you guys.
Yeah, and then you want to look at Jose Ramirez always gets overlooked, and he puts up some crazy numbers. He's not even getting talked. No one's even thinking about him. The Indians have a really good record. He's the best player in the team, consistently hitting 270, 280 with elite defense and elite base running for a third game.
Like he's not even considered the best in his division with Witt.
It's crazy how deep the AL is right now.
It's almost like the AFC and NFC in football right now. Like, you got good teams in the NFC. It's just there's not really that top end guy like a Mahomes or like an Allen, you know. And it's like it's just
maybe next year when Shohei gets healthy, but right now obviously not. But I want to also ask you, who would, as of right now, if you had to pick, who would be the World Series if it was like, who would your pick to come out of the AL and the NL?
I'm stuck between 4 teams, 4 contenders here in the AL. I do love the Yankees. I think Judge, especially in October, the Bronx Bombers are going to show up. I do think that they're going to be great. I do like the Astros. I mean, never count out the Astros. If they make the dance, they're a lot like the Phillies, where it's just like it's hard to envision them losing early. Like, it's just not going to happen. So the Astros could definitely make that run, and the Astros have been the one team in these last few years that have kept the Yankees from really potentially having a couple more World Series. And, of course, the one was the scandal year stuff. But still, besides the point, you got the Orioles and Guardians that are rounding out my top 4 teams in the AL. I do think they are the teams that are in the ALDS. So, at the end of the day, I think that that's going to be interesting. I think that there's one team that's really under the radar, and that's the Kansas City Royals. They're my dark horse contender. Bobby Witt's the Corbin Carroll this year, and the Royals are the Diamondbacks of this year. And I would not be surprised if it's Royals, Yankees in the ALC. And honestly, I do think that the Yankees are going to make it, sadly. My dad's a big Yankees fan. He's not going to let me live this down. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pick the Yankees. It's so hard to pitch around them, especially in the playoffs when pitching is so important, because at the end of the day, you're not going to have your top end pitcher playing every single game, because you're going to have to save him for game 4, game 5, game 6, 7, whatever, depending on what series you're in. And because of that, it's a whole chess game. And the Yankees right now, it's just they're basically there's no pitching around him in the playoffs, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have to throw out your 3rd or 4th best pitcher into a lineup of Judge, Stanton, Torres to start a game. And it's just like, how do you compete with, especially with Jazz Chisholm? He's another one there added. And there's so many different guys that can turn it on for the Yankees too, that we've seen turn it on in the past. So it's a matter of time before I think the Yankees really put themselves on the map. And this is the year I think they do it. As for the NL, a very important thing for me in the NL has been the pitching. And I do think that the Phillies are one of the best teams. I think it's going to be Phillies-Dodgers in the NLC. I think they're both very good. A team that I could also see making it would be like the Brewers and the Braves. Good pitching, very solid hitting throughout the year too. And we all know the Braves, what they can do in the playoffs. They've upset the Dodgers in the past. They've made some runs all the way. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did it again. Braves and Phillies are one of the best matchups I've ever seen in the playoff series in a long time. So I'd like to see that again. And that's coming from a Mets fan. I hate both of them. I'm going to root for an earthquake, like at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, I think they're good. Same with the Diamondbacks. I do think that the Diamondbacks have taken a step back, but again, they have the veteran leadership to go on that run again. It's just going to be a lot of it's going to come down to if they can do what they did last year, and I don't see them being able to do that. It's going to be very difficult. So I'm going to take them out of the race. It's going to be Phillies, Dodgers, and the NLCs, and I'm going to give it to the Phillies very slightly here. I'm nervous that Bryce Harper is going to be the reason I get screwed over in this, but I'm going to pick him over Shohei Ohtani in this due to the pitching. I just think that they can be a deeper team in the playoffs with pitching. I think that it's going to be very tough. And one thing that I'm going to say here is realistically with them is we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah. For the NL, you took the words right out of my mouth with the Dodgers versus the Phillies. I think that's what's going to be it. But one team you forgot to mention was the Padres. They've been one of the best teams in baseball since the All-Star break. I mean, you got pitchers like Dylan Cease who have been electric. You got Fernando Tatis Jr. is a stud. Jackson Merrill he might win Rookie of the Year. He's been a beast. The guy they traded from the Marlins, blanking on his name, he's a stud. Like you forgot about the Padres. They're a really good team. And then, but
I was going to mention the Padres. That was the thing is that I wanted to save the Padres for last. I just don't think they have the pitching to keep up with teams like the Phillies and Dodgers at the end of the day. So I think they got good bats. It's just about the pitching. And obviously, as a pitcher in high school, that's one thing that always fascinated me was how teams did it in the playoffs. And one thing I've noticed over these last few years is the team with the healthiest pitchers is normally the team that makes it far. And it happens very consistently. And the thing is with the Dodgers and Phillies, I can't see – like I think the Padres are definitely on par with the Dodgers and Phillies in the bat category. It's just when it comes to pitching, there's 2 or 3 options that the Phillies have that are insane. And then you got 1, maybe 2 for the Padres. And so
yeah,
at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but I'm going to be different than you. I'm going to choose the Dodgers to beat the Phillies because you brought up pitching. The Dodgers, they just added Jack Flaherty, and then they're going to be getting their guys back. Tyler Glasnow is an absolute stud. Yamamoto's a stud. Clayton Kershaw's a stud. Like all these guys have been battling injuries all year. They'll probably all be back by the first
postseason now. So
but then they also have Walker Buehler. Maybe he goes to the bullpen, and then that offense. I mean, it's struggled in years past, but he could be a bullpen guy. I don't think he makes the pitching roster this year, but I mean. Yeah. He's a good reliever. I think he could be a good long inning guy if one of the starters just has a rough couple innings. You know how short a leash is in the playoffs. But I mean, that offense is it's gone cold, and last year it went really cold, and that's what killed them. But I mean, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, that's pretty deadly. And then getting Michael Kopech from the White Sox, he has been an absolute shutdown elite closer since the Dodgers traded for him.
We were talking about that in the last episode, that Kopech was going to be one of the better deadline guys.
Yeah, he was an absolute stud for the Dodgers. So because of that, I'm going to give the Dodgers the edge. They've been playing – Phillies haven't been playing good since the All-Star break. The Dodgers have. So really, that's what it is in baseball is who gets hot at the right time. And I think the Dodgers are just playing better right now than the Phillies. So I'm going to give it to them. And then in the AL, you may call me biased, but I'm going with my Yankees. I'm not betting against Aaron Judge and Juan Soto in the playoffs. I get bullpen's important, and our bullpen's been rough, but we have some reinforcements coming. Scott Effross, Ian Hamilton, Nick Birdie. Those are some guys that in their time in the majors for the Yankees, they have had some really good moments. They have looked really good. So they're coming back through soon. Clark Schmidt's coming back through soon. So there's pitching reinforcements to come to help with what has been the last 2 months has been kind of like the weaker part of the team. The offense is obviously like one of the best in the league, but the pitching has been a little weak, but we're getting guys back. We're getting healthy. Rizzo's coming back. Like, we're getting really healthy at the right time. We've been playing better baseball as of late. So I really like the Yankees odds. One dark horse team that I want to mention, the Mariners. This is based on a big if. It's if the bats can get better. I'm not gonna pick them to do anything. They're currently like 5 games out of the playoffs. But this last month, if the bats can get cooking, I mean, with Julio Rodriguez and Randy Arozarena, Ty France, Cal Riley, they got some studs on the team. They just haven't had great years.
Hitting the nail with them too. That's my other team for a wild card in the
because
AL.
Their pitching is
about who gets hot at
pitching.
Right time.
And their pitching is like they have like one of the best starting rotations in the league. I mean, you got George Kirby, you got Brian Rue, you got a couple others. You've got some absolute studs. And on that, like, I think they have like 4 or 5, like 4 guys, I think, with a sub, like you're a near 3 ERA. Like, I think all 5, I think, might be a sub 4, and then their bullpen's got some guys too. So their bats can even become average. They can go on a run. Right. Yeah, if their bats can even become average, I think they can make a run.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Real quickly, before we have to end the show, I want to bring up a little bit of college football. It starts this weekend. There's some real marquee matchups. I mean, you got Clemson, Georgia. You got Notre Dame, Texas A&M. You got USC, LSU. Miami, Florida. At least that's a big one for me. I'm a Gators fan. So I just want to give your thoughts on who do you think are going to win these big time games?
Well, I'm going to run through these, man. I think Georgia takes care of Cade Klubnik. This is going to be a game where we really see what Cade Klubnik is. I do think he's a very solid quarterback, but you're going up against probably one of the best defenses in college football, no doubt, in maybe top defense in college football this upcoming year. I really like a lot of their pieces. So at the end of the day, we're going to see what Cade Klubnik can do. I think that they keep it close. Obviously, it's a marquee matchup. I just think Georgia's a little better. Carson Beck handles business. Miami and Florida, as much as you're a Florida fan, I don't hate Florida by any means. I'm going to pick Miami. I do think that they have the better quarterback in this situation, at least right now. I think your quarterback can develop to be a lot better than Tyler Van
Graham Mertz was a stud last year. Don't disrespect Graham Mertz. He was a stud last year.
No, I'm not
Don't
saying
disrespect
he's not.
my boy.
I'm saying at the end of the day, I think that he's a little worse right now. I think that this is going to be a big year for him, though. I do think that you guys are going to be very fair. I think Miami wins. It's going to be the closest out of all these matchups in my eyes. I think this is going to be one that's a very big game, especially come the end of the year. I think this is going to be potentially a bowl matchup. I would like to see. I think that it could happen. Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. As much as I've liked what Texas A&M is doing, I have to go Notre Dame right now. I think Notre Dame is going to be all right again. I really like the quarterback. I'm blanking on his name there, but
Riley Leonard.
Yeah, Riley Leonard that they got. So
from
I really
Duke.
think from Duke, Riley Leonard is going to be a very good quarterback for them. A lot like Sam Hartman. So that's the one part is they don't have to change the offense at all. It's going to look pretty much the same. And I think that they're going to be fine, even though they lose Estime, who went to the draft. So at the end of the day, you got USC and LSU in the next matchup. I think LSU is going to be a pretty good team this year. I think LSU handles business. USC's defense is the real reason I'm picking LSU. They made additions, yes, but I'm going to ride with LSU in this one. And then the last game I'm adding this one is Boston College versus Florida State. A lot of people aren't going to think that this is going to be that close, but I think Florida State's going to win closer than people expect because look at what they did against Georgia Tech, man. They fell. They plopped a poopy egg, and it's like I can see it happening here. I think Boston College is a lot better than people give them credit for. I watch the ACC all the time, diehard Syracuse fan. Boston College has been pretty solid. They've had a lot of very solid players. I really like their own line, so we'll see what ends up happening. I think Florida State's going to have some big shoes to fill this year. After getting snubbed last year, they're going to have to show that they can do it again.
Yeah. So I agree with half of those picks. I guess
You're picking Florida.
I guess 3/5. Yes, Florida, Miami. I'm riding with my Gators.
Smells like some bias here, man. Come on now. Get that out of here.
There might be a little bit of bias, but I'm not going against my boy Graham Mertz. I just think Miami every year gets overrated, and then what happens? They suck.
No, I definitely agree.
And then maybe they win a couple games, and then it's like, Miami might be back this year. Let's rate them in the top 25, and then they suck. Florida, on the other hand, lately they've been rated lower, but then other than getting blown out by Georgia, they play some close games against some good teams, and they pull off some wins. And I think with Miami always getting overrated to start the year, and I think Florida being a little bit underrated right now, I think Florida ends up winning this game. I don't like Tyler Van Dyke. I think he's another one of those Miami quarterbacks that gets overhyped and just is not going to do anything. But I do really like Graham Mertz. Losing his number one receiver and Ricky Pearsall is going to be tough. Losing his number one running back and Travis Etienne's brother, not even going to say his name because he went to Georgia. Screw him. But I think the offensive line is going to be better. I think it's another year in Billy Napier's system. His coaching job's honestly on the line if they don't at least go. If they don't make it to another bowl game, I'm thinking 7-5, 8-4. They at least have to go. Or there's a good chance he can get fired. I think his job's on the line. I think he's going to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more desperate. So, and Graham Mertz is fighting for if he wants to get drafted or not. I mean, this is really his last year. So if he wants to make it to the NFL, so I think they're going to come out on fire, and I think they're going to end up pulling this game out. Clemson, Georgia, I'm with you. I think Clemson's defense may keep this a little bit closer than people expect. But
exactly
in a low scoring fashion, though.
People are thinking.
Yeah, because I don't think Clayton Covenant's that good. He was not good last year. Maybe he takes the step. He was a very highly touted quarterback coming out of high school, but he just did not look very good last year. But yeah, Clemson's defense is really good. And obviously Georgia's is really good. And I'm think Carson Beck's a little overrated, and their top running back, Travis Etienne's brother, is suspended for a game. So
you're really happy about
that. Yeah. So I mean, without Brock Bowers, without top running back, without the top receiver against a really good defense, I could see their offense starting out slow. So I could see that being a close game. LSU, USC. I'm going with the USC upset here. LSU just lost their quarterback and their top two receivers. And LSU always starts the year out slow. They always drop. Like last year, they got blown out by Florida State, and then at the end of the year, they're firing on all cylinders. I think it was the year before they had two early losses, then started dominating. Like they always seem to start out slow, and I think USC is a little bit underrated right now. Yeah, losing Caleb Williams sucks. But Lincoln Riley is an absolute mastermind with quarterbacks. Like he is just every quarterback he is able to pull wonders with them. Like they just, other than Spencer Rattler, that's the one example. But like, I mean, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Caleb Williams, like he is a quarterback whisperer. And I get that defense is bad, but they didn't really lose anyone in the draft. I think their defense should, their defense should be a little bit better this year. So I expect them to be, I expect them to be better than people think. LSU always starts the year out slow. So give me USC in the upset, and Notre Dame, Texas A&M. I'm going to go with Notre Dame. They have the clear quarterback advantage. Texas A&M kind of reminds me of Miami recently, where they just get overrated every year. They get all these good recruits.
They're on the poll right now. They're on the poll.
What? Yeah, I know.
Texas A&M is on the poll.
Yeah, they're 20. I think they're ranked 21st or whatever. But again, they get overrated because they get all these top recruits. But Jimbo Fisher is just not a very good coach. Yeah, like I don't know. I've never been a big Texas A&M guy. So I'm going to give Notre Dame
over Texas A&M.
The edge in that one. What?
I'd pick Florida over Texas.
Yes, you should. Yes.
A&M.
Good. But that is it for today for episode 6 of the Sports Lab podcast. If you enjoyed, I hope you like and subscribe, share. We're trying to grow this channel. So I hope all of you have a great rest of your night, and we will see you next Tuesday when we really get into the NFL for good.
Yes. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, we will see you next time on the Sports Lab podcast.